The November wind cut through the Hamptons like a knife, rattling the windows of the taxi as it wound its way down the narrow coastal road. Emma Sullivan pressed her forehead against the cold glass, watching bare trees blur past in the fading afternoon light. She clutched her leather portfolio tighter, its contents representing 6 years of dedication to contemporary dance and 3 months of unemployment that had led her to this moment. The advertisement had been peculiar from the start. Private dance and etiquette instructor needed for 2 young girls at a coastal estate. No formal credentials required, but experience with children essential. The salary offered was generous enough to make her palms sweat when she first read the figure. The interview had been conducted over the phone by a woman named Mrs. Clark, whose clipped British accent left no room for casual conversation. Emma had answered questions about her teaching philosophy, her patience level, and curiously, her ability to maintain discretion. She had said yes without hesitation. Her studio had closed in September, another casualty of rising Manhattan rents and declining enrollment. The small apartment she shared with 2 roommates in Brooklyn felt more suffocating each day. This position offered room and board, isolation from the chaos of the city, and perhaps most importantly, purpose. The taxi turned through imposing iron gates that creaked open as if expecting them. The driveway stretched ahead, lined with dormant rose bushes and ancient oaks that formed a canopy overhead. Emma caught her first glimpse of the house and felt her breath catch in her throat. It wasn't a house, it was an estate. The 3-story mansion sprawled across the landscape like something from another era, all weathered grey stone and tall windows that reflected the dying light. Ivy climbed the eastern wall, brown and skeletal in the winter cold. A circular fountain stood silent in the center of the courtyard, its basin empty except for dead leaves that rustled in the wind. The taxi driver whistled low. "Some place," he muttered, pulling up to the front entrance. "You sure about this, miss?" Emma managed a smile that felt more confident than she felt. "Absolutely." She paid the fare, adding a generous tip, and stepped out into the biting wind. Her single suitcase felt inadequate as she dragged it up the stone steps to the massive wooden door. Before she could knock, the door swung open. A woman in her 60s stood in the doorway, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, her dark dress formal and unwrinkled. This could only be Mrs. Clark. "Miss Sullivan," the woman said. Not a question, but a statement. "You're punctual. Please come in." The entrance hall was cavernous. A grand staircase curved upward to the 2nd floor, its banister gleaming even in the dim light. Portraits lined the walls, stern-faced men and elegant women staring down at Emma as if judging her worthiness. The floor was polished marble, her footsteps echoing as she followed Mrs. Clark deeper into the house. "The master is occupied with business calls this evening," Mrs. Clark explained, her heels clicking rhythmically against the floor. "You'll meet him at dinner. The girls are in their rooms preparing for bed. You'll meet them tomorrow morning." "The master?" Emma asked, unable to contain her curiosity. Mrs. Clark's expression didn't change. "Mr. Ashford, though the staff refers to him as the Duke, a nickname that stuck from his college days at Princeton. Old money, old traditions." She glanced back at Emma, her gaze sharp. "You'll address him as Mr. Ashford, of course." They climbed the staircase to the 2nd floor, then continued down a long hallway lined with more portraits and antique furniture that looked too valuable to touch. Mrs. Clark stopped at a door near the end of the corridor and produced a key from her pocket. "Your room," she said, pushing the door open. "Breakfast is at 7 sharp in the dining room. You'll begin your duties at 9. The room was larger than Emma's entire Brooklyn bedroom. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, draped in cream linens. French doors opened onto a small balcony overlooking the ocean. She could hear the waves crashing against the rocks below, a constant rhythmic sound that was both soothing and melancholy. "Thank you," Emma said, but Mrs. Clark was already gone, the door clicking shut behind her. Emma set her suitcase on the bed and moved to the balcony doors, pushing them open despite the cold. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, dark and restless under the twilight sky. She wrapped her arms around herself, wondering what she had gotten herself into. The house felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by silence, by absence, by grief that hung in the air like fog. She unpacked quickly, hanging her few dresses in the enormous closet, arranging her toiletries in the pristine bathroom with its clawfoot tub and gold fixtures. When she was done, she sat on the edge of the bed and checked her phone. No signal. The isolation was complete. Dinner was a formal affair. Emma descended the staircase at precisely 6:30, as Mrs. Clark had instructed. The dining room was intimidating, with a table long enough to seat 20 people. Only 2 places were set, at opposite ends. She waited, standing awkwardly near her chair, until she heard footsteps. The man who entered the room stopped her breath. He was tall, perhaps 6'2", with dark hair that showed traces of grey at the temples. His face was all sharp angles and stern lines, handsome in a severe way that suggested he rarely smiled. He wore a dark suit despite being at home, the jacket perfectly tailored to his broad shoulders. His eyes, when they met hers, were a startling shade of grey, like the ocean during a storm. "Miss Sullivan," he said, his voice deep and controlled. "I'm Alexander Ashford. Welcome to Ashford House." He didn't offer his hand, and Emma didn't extend hers. The distance between them felt deliberate, a boundary she sensed she shouldn't cross. "Thank you for having me, Mr. Ashford," she replied, keeping her voice professional. "I'm looking forward to working with your daughters." Something flickered across his face, too quick to identify. "They need structure," he said abruptly. "Discipline. Their mother." He stopped, his jaw tightening. "Mrs. Clark has explained your duties." "Yes, sir." Emma felt like she was being interviewed again, assessed and measured. "Good." He moved to his chair at the far end of the table and sat. A young woman Emma hadn't noticed before appeared from a side door carrying covered dishes. Dinner was served in silence, an elaborate meal of roasted chicken, vegetables and potatoes that Emma barely tasted. Alexander Ashford ate mechanically, his attention seemingly elsewhere. He asked no questions, offered no conversation. The silence stretched between them like an ocean, vast and uncrossable. When the meal ended, he stood abruptly. "I work late most evenings," he said, not quite looking at her. "The girls' breakfast at 8. Mrs. Clark will show you the ballroom tomorrow. That's where you'll conduct your lessons." "The ballroom?" Emma asked, surprised. "Yes." His expression was unreadable. "My daughters need to learn proper dance etiquette. Waltz, foxtrot, the basics. Their mother was an excellent dancer." He paused, and Emma saw the grief in his eyes, raw and unhealed. "You come highly recommended, Miss Sullivan. Don't disappoint me." He left before she could respond. Emma sat alone at the enormous table, feeling more isolated than she had in her entire life. That night, she lay awake in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the house settle and creak around her. Wind rattled the balcony doors. Somewhere down the hall, she heard what sounded like crying, high and childish, quickly muffled. Her heart ached for children she hadn't yet met, growing up in this beautiful, sorrowful house. She finally drifted to sleep near midnight, dreaming of empty ballrooms and grey eyes that looked at her as if she were a ghost. Morning came grey and cold. Emma dressed carefully in black leggings and a simple navy sweater, professional but practical for teaching dance. She braided her hair back from her face and took a deep breath before leaving her room. Mrs. Clark was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. "The girls are finishing breakfast," she said without preamble. "You'll meet them in the ballroom in 15 minutes. I'll show you the way." They walked through a maze of corridors. Emma tried to memorize the route, noting the paintings they passed, the turns they took. The house was a labyrinth, each hallway looking like the last. Finally, Mrs. Clark stopped before a set of double doors, their surface carved with intricate patterns of flowers and vines. "The ballroom," Mrs. Clark said. She pushed open the doors and stepped aside. Emma walked into a space that took her breath away. The ballroom was massive, with soaring ceilings and tall windows along one wall that flooded the room with pale morning light. The floor was polished wood, perfect for dancing. An enormous crystal chandelier hung from the center of the ceiling, its prisms catching the light and scattering rainbows across the walls. But the room was empty, completely, utterly empty. No furniture, no decorations, nothing but space and light and silence. Emma walked to the center of the floor, her footsteps echoing. She turned slowly, taking it all in. This was where she would work, where she would teach. The potential of the space was incredible. She was so absorbed in the room that she didn't hear the doors open again, didn't hear the light footsteps crossing the floor. "Are you our new mommy?" Emma spun around, her heart jumping. Two girls stood behind her, so different they might not have been sisters. The older one was perhaps 9, tall for her age, with straight dark hair that fell to her shoulders and her father's grey eyes. She wore a white dress with a navy cardigan, formal and proper. Her expression was guarded, assessing. The younger girl was maybe 6, small and delicate, with curly blonde hair that framed her face like a halo. Her eyes were bright blue, curious and hopeful. She wore pink leggings and a tunic covered in glitter, her feet bare despite the cold. Emma began, caught completely off guard. "I'm Emma. I'm your new dance teacher." "Not our mommy?" the younger girl asked, her face falling. "Charlotte, don't be stupid," the older girl said sharply. "Mommy's dead. She's not coming back." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. "I know that, Sophia. I'm not stupid." Emma knelt down, bringing herself to their eye level. Her training had included working with grieving children, but theory and practice were vastly different. "I'm not your mommy," she said gently, looking between them, "but I'm here to teach you to dance. Would you like that?" Sophia crossed her arms. "We already know how to dance. Daddy makes us practice every week." "Then you can show me what you know," Emma suggested. "I bet you're both very good." Charlotte brightened slightly. "Mommy taught us," she said. "Before she got sick, she was the best dancer in the whole world." "I'm sure she was," Emma said softly. She stood looking at these two wounded children and felt her purpose solidify. This wasn't just a job. This was something more. "Can you do this?" Charlotte suddenly executed a clumsy pirouette, her arms flailing. She wobbled and nearly fell, but caught herself with a giggle. Emma smiled, her first genuine smile since arriving at Ashford House. "That was beautiful, but let me show you a trick to help with your balance." She demonstrated a proper pirouette, her years of training evident in the fluid grace of her movement. Even Sophia looked impressed. "You're really good," she admitted grudgingly. "Thank you. Would you like to try?" Emma asked. For the next hour, she worked with the girls, gently correcting their form, teaching them proper posture and foot positions. Charlotte was enthusiastic but clumsy, throwing herself into each movement with abandon. Sophia was careful and precise, her movements controlled, as if she was afraid of making a mistake. Emma watched them both, seeing not just students, but children desperate for attention, for approval, for normalcy in a world that had been shattered. "Your mother must have been a wonderful teacher," Emma said during a break. They sat on the floor near the windows, catching their breath. Sophia's expression closed off immediately. "She was perfect," she said flatly. Everything about her was perfect. Charlotte leaned against Emma's shoulder, a casual gesture that made Emma's heart clench. "She smelled like roses," the little girl said quietly. "And she had long hair that she let me braid sometimes. And she sang when she danced." "She sounds amazing," Emma said. "She's never coming back," Sophia repeated, as if saying it enough times would make it hurt less. "Daddy says we have to be strong. We have to remember her but not cry about it." Emma felt anger spark in her chest, quickly suppressed. These children needed to grieve, not to be strong, but she wasn't their parent, wasn't their therapist. She was just their dance teacher. "It's okay to cry," she said carefully. "Missing someone you love is natural." "Daddy doesn't cry," Sophia said. "He just works all the time now." Before Emma could respond, the ballroom doors opened. Alexander Ashford stood in the doorway, still in a suit, his expression unreadable. Emma scrambled to her feet, suddenly self-conscious. "Daddy!" Charlotte jumped up and ran to him, but he didn't bend down to hug her. He simply rested one hand briefly on her head. "How are the lessons progressing?" he asked, looking past his daughters to Emma. "Very well," Emma said, trying to keep her voice steady under his scrutiny. "Your daughters are natural dancers. They have excellent foundation." "Good." His gaze swept the room, lingering on the empty space, as if seeing something Emma couldn't. "This room hasn't been used in over a year," he said abruptly. "My wife used to host charity balls here. She was very talented." The past tense hung heavy in the air. Charlotte pressed closer to her father, but he seemed not to notice. "I can see it was a beautiful space for entertaining," Emma said carefully. "It was." Alexander's jaw tightened. "Continue with your lessons, Miss Sullivan. The girls need structure in their lives, normalcy." He looked down at his daughters for the first time, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. "You're being good for Miss Sullivan." "Yes, Daddy," Sophia said quietly. "Yes," Charlotte agreed enthusiastically. "Good." He turned to leave, then paused. "Dinner is at 6:30 again. The girls eat earlier in the nursery. You'll take your meals with me." He was gone before Emma could respond. The room felt colder in his absence. "Daddy's sad all the time now," Charlotte whispered. "I wish he would smile like he used to." Emma looked at these two motherless children, at the empty ballroom that had once hosted elegant parties, at the echoes of a life that had been shattered by loss. She thought about the stern man who couldn't even hug his daughters, who held his grief so tightly it had frozen him solid. "Let's dance," she said suddenly. "Let's fill this room with music and movement. Let's make it beautiful again." She pulled out her phone, grateful she'd downloaded music before losing signal. A waltz began playing, sweet and melancholy. Emma extended her hands to the girls. "Who wants to learn a real waltz?" Charlotte grabbed her hand immediately. Sophia hesitated, then stepped forward as well. They danced in the empty ballroom, three figures moving through space and light, filling the silence with life. Emma taught them the basic box step, guiding their feet, counting out the rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Charlotte giggled when she stepped on Emma's toes. Sophia's face relaxed into something almost like a smile, and for those moments, the grief that haunted Ashford House receded, replaced by something fragile and new. Hope. That night at dinner, Alexander Ashford asked about the day's lesson. Emma described the girls' progress, careful to emphasize their strengths. "Sophia has excellent control and discipline," she said. "She's very focused for her age, and Charlotte has natural joy in movement. She's not afraid to make mistakes." Alexander's expression didn't change, but Emma thought she saw something flicker in his grey eyes. "Their mother was the same," he said quietly. "Sophia is like me. Charlotte is like Elizabeth." He said his wife's name as if it hurt, as if speaking it aloud was a wound reopening. "They speak of her often," Emma said carefully. "I know." He stared at his untouched wineglass. "Mrs. Clark says I should remove her things from the house, that it's unhealthy for the girls to be surrounded by her presence." "What do you think?" Emma asked. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Emma saw the depth of his pain. "I think I don't know how to be a father without her," he said. "I think I'm failing my daughters every day." The honesty of it stunned Emma into silence. "I hired you because you came recommended as someone with patience and compassion," Alexander continued. "The girls need that. They need someone who can give them what I can't. They need their father," Emma said gently. "They need to know he loves them." "I do love them." His voice was fierce. "Everything I do is for them." "Then show them," Emma said, surprised by her own boldness. "Grief doesn't mean you have to withdraw. It means you need each other more." Alexander stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You've been here one day, Miss Sullivan. Don't presume to understand my family." He left, and Emma sat alone once more, her appetite gone. She had overstepped. She knew it, but she couldn't bring herself to regret it. The days began to blur together. Emma woke early, took her breakfast alone in the vast dining room, then spent her mornings with the girls in the ballroom. They learned the waltz, the foxtrot, basic ballet positions. Emma incorporated contemporary movements as well, teaching them to express emotion through dance. Charlotte opened like a flower, her initial shyness melting away. She chatted constantly during lessons, telling Emma about her favorite books, her collection of stuffed animals, the way her mother used to read to her every night. Sophia remained guarded, but Emma began to see cracks in her armor. The girl was hungry for approval, for attention, for someone to notice her. She practiced obsessively, staying late after lessons to perfect her turns, her posture. "You don't have to be perfect," Emma told her one afternoon. They were alone in the ballroom, Charlotte having been called away by Mrs. Clark for a doctor's appointment. "Yes, I do," Sophia said, her jaw set stubbornly. "Daddy says excellence is the only acceptable standard." "Excellence and perfection aren't the same thing," Emma said. "Excellence means doing your best. Perfection means you're afraid to fail." Sophia's eyes filled with sudden tears. "Mommy was perfect," she whispered. "If I'm perfect too, maybe Daddy will look at me the way he used to look at her." Emma's heart broke. She pulled the girl into her arms, and Sophia collapsed against her, sobbing. They sat on the ballroom floor, surrounded by light and space, and Emma held her while she cried for the mother she'd lost and the father who couldn't see past his own grief. "You are enough exactly as you are," Emma murmured. "You don't have to be anything other than yourself." When the tears finally stopped, Sophia pulled back, scrubbing at her face. "Don't tell Daddy I cried," she said. "He says we have to be strong." "Crying is strong," Emma said firmly. "It takes courage to feel your feelings." Sophia looked at her with something like wonder. "Mommy used to say that too." That evening, Emma descended to dinner with trepidation. She and Alexander had barely spoken since their tense exchange. He'd been avoiding her, working late, appearing only briefly to check on the girls' progress before disappearing back into his study. But tonight, he was already seated when she arrived. "Miss Sullivan," he said, his tone neutral. "Please sit." Emma took her seat, bracing for confrontation. "Mrs. Clark informed me of Sophia's emotional display today," Alexander said without preamble. Emma's spine stiffened. "She needed to cry, Mr. Ashford. She's been holding in her grief for too long." "I know." His admission surprised her. He looked exhausted, she realized. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. "I know my daughters need more than I'm giving them. I don't know how to be what they need." The vulnerability in his voice disarmed her anger. "Start small," Emma suggested. "Join us for lessons tomorrow. Dance with them. Let them see you laughing, moving, living." Alexander shook his head. "I can't. That ballroom, it's full of Elizabeth. Every time I walk in there, I see her, hosting charity events, waltzing with donors, teaching the girls to curtsy and spin." "Then make new memories," Emma said. "The girls need their father more than they need a perfect memory of their mother." He looked at her across the expanse of the table, and Emma felt something shift between them, an understanding, tentative and fragile. "I'll think about it," he said finally. It was enough. The next morning, Emma was in the ballroom early, setting up for the day's lesson. She'd decided to teach the girls a simple routine they could perform together, a short waltz that would require coordination and trust. The doors opened and both girls rushed in, Charlotte bouncing with her usual energy, Sophia more reserved but with a lightness that hadn't been there before. "Can we learn something new today?" Charlotte asked. "Actually, I thought we could work on a routine together," Emma said. "Something you could show your father." Sophia's face lit up. "Really? Like a performance?" "Exactly like that." They spent the morning choreographing and practicing. Emma taught them how to mirror each other's movements, how to move as one unit, despite their different heights and abilities. Charlotte struggled with the precision, but her enthusiasm more than made up for her technical limitations. Sophia was in her element, memorizing the steps quickly, helping her sister with patience Emma hadn't known she possessed. They were so engrossed in their work that none of them noticed the figure standing in the doorway. "That's beautiful," Alexander said. All three of them froze. Emma's heart began to race. He had come. He was here. "Daddy!" Charlotte ran to him. This time he bent down and caught her, lifting her into his arms. The gesture was stiff, unpracticed, but genuine. "Will you show me what you've learned?" he asked. Sophia hung back, uncertain. Emma gave her an encouraging nod. "From the beginning," Emma said, restarting the music. The girls performed their routine, and Emma watched Alexander's face as he watched his daughters. She saw the grief there, yes, but also pride, love, a father's fierce protectiveness. When the music ended, both girls looked at him expectantly. "That was exceptional," he said, his voice rough. "Your mother would be so proud." Sophia's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Really? Really?" Alexander set Charlotte down and held out his hand to Sophia. "Will you dance with me?" Emma saw the girl's shock, the desperate hope. Sophia took her father's hand.